And tonight, ABC 13 has a preview of those two candidates vying for your vote this year for Lieutenant Governor. In our Lynchburg studio, I spoke with both candidates running for that office, Democratic candidate Ghazala Hashmi and Republican John Reid. Ghazala Hashmi, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Why are you running for Lieutenant Governor in the first place?
You know, Pat, I've spent 6 years now in the Virginia Senate, and I've had an opportunity to see how critical legislation is discussed and passed through our General Assembly. We have such an important period in our Virginia history now. This is an opportunity to make sure that we're taking Virginia to the next level. We need executive leadership that is ready to hit the ground running and ready to do this hard work. And after spending the time that I've had in the Virginia Senate, this is a good time for me to take this next step.
John Reid, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome so much. Why do you want to be Lieutenant Governor?
Yeah, it's not so much wanting to be Lieutenant Governor, because I've had really wonderful experiences in kind of high-profile jobs that, quite frankly, paid a heck of a lot more than the LG's job does. I think Virginia is really at a crossroads here. We've had great leadership from Glenn Youngkin as governor, Winsome Sears, Jason Miyares. Stability. Glenn Youngkin, I think, has reached out to people who didn't agree with him and has tried to find a conciliatory way forward for the state, because we're a pretty divided state, depending on where you are. And I was very frustrated in 2020 and 2021, the violence of 2020, which engulfed the capital city where I live in Richmond. The government overreach that happened during COVID and the vaccination era, where the government picked and chose who was going to succeed and who was going to stay open and who was going to fail. I don't think we can risk going back to an era where Democrats, who are often, with all due respect, social justice warriors and not very business-centric, can be put in charge. And that's why I've stepped up to run for LG.
As you know, of course, in a tight vote in the Senate, the Lieutenant Governor could provide that tie-breaking vote. Where is your stance on bipartisanship, kind of reaching across the political aisle and trying to make consensus on important issues?
Before I actually ran for office in 2019, I was a community college professor. And so for us in the education system, issues are not Republican or Democrat. They're really based on what is going to be important for the students that we serve. And in the same way, I take a look at legislation through that lens. Is it improving the lives of the people we represent? What is it doing to make sure that we are moving in the right direction? I work with so many of my colleagues. Some of my dearest friends are actually our Republican members in the Virginia Senate.
Of course, in a tight vote in the Senate, the Lieutenant Governor's vote would be a tiebreaker. Where do you stand on bipartisanship, especially in the current political climate that's so divided?
Yeah. It is 21-19, so it's a 40-seat body. It is likely that whoever is Lieutenant Governor will cast those tie votes. I think it's important to start the day seeking commonality, but make no mistake, I'm a Republican, I'm a conservative. I've been that way my entire life. There are about 9,000 hours of radio time of me defending President Trump and defending a lot of conservative leaders, conservative governors. I was comms director for George Allen when he was a U.S. Senator. So I know my way around a lot of these issues. You can count on me to be a conservative vote, but I do recognize it's a divided state. I've got to reach out to legislators from other parts of the state that may not agree with me and try to find commonality, and that's what I'm going to try to do. I don't owe anybody anything at that state capitol. I didn't go through the House of Delegates. I didn't go through the Senate. And so you get a fresh set of eyes, a fresh mind, an independent-minded person in this role. I think that's probably what Virginians want.
Okay. Let's talk about Medicaid for a moment. As you know, some 2 million Virginians are enrolled in the Medicaid program. Hundreds of thousands of them, according to Congress's Joint Economic Committee, could lose Medicaid coverage because of the federal cuts. What do you do to help those people that will be affected?
You know, I'm chair of the Senate Committee on Education and Healthcare, and I also serve as vice chair on our Joint Commission on Healthcare. So these are issues top of mind. We are very concerned about the impact that the Medicaid cuts are going to have on the lives of our patients and also on our hospital and entire healthcare system. And so now that we have the congressional budget in front of us, we have a little bit more clarity on what those impacts are going to be. We are already beginning those conversations on how can Virginia fill some of those gaps, but it's going to require that we make some really hard decisions because, as you know, Medicaid covers the most vulnerable among us.
Let's get some issues down real quick. About 2 million Virginians are currently enrolled in Medicaid. And with the federal cuts to Medicaid, Congress's Joint Economic Committee estimates that 322,000 Virginians could lose Medicaid coverage. What do you do to help those people?
Don't believe it. That's a lie.
You don't believe that?
I don't believe that number is true. I worked in the U.S.
Do you believe that there will be some cuts?
There'll be cuts, but
Yep.
they're to the people who weren't supposed to be on the rolls in the first place.
Okay.
I mean, that's the fundamental here, is that President Trump is trying to save this institution, which so many people have built their retirement on, have built their survival on, so that Americans who have paid into the system will be able to receive benefits. I worked in the Senate. I've been around people who inflate numbers, they pull numbers together. The first day I saw that 322,000 number, I called it for what it was. That is not true. And no one wants to talk about all of the people who have been gaming the system and taking advantage of the system. We are on the verge of an economic collapse in Washington. $37 trillion in debt. No one's taking it seriously. And I know it would be nice to pay for everybody to have a lot of different benefits on the federal level, on the state level. We need sober people who will go to Richmond and Washington and make some very difficult decisions about what the priorities are. Medicaid is a priority, but this back and forth with fake numbers and trying to alarm people and panic people, I don't think is fair. I also don't think it's fair for people who don't deserve to have the service to get the service for free, and that's something that's got to stop.
As you know, there are so many candidates who are running for statewide office that want to do away with the car tax. Are you saying, wait a minute, not so fast on this one?
Well, this has been tried before in Virginia, and one thing we know is that removing the car tax leaves a huge deficit in our budget. And of course, we want to provide relief, especially to our hardworking Virginia families. But we have to make sure that we get it right and that we have an answer, that when we eliminate one tax, that we know where the revenue is going to come from to support those essential services that Virginia provides.
So you're more open-minded toward doing away with the car tax?
I'm always ready to have conversations.
Okay, there you go. Okay, I want to talk about the state's car tax. You, among other candidates, are in favor of doing away with that, yet money raised from that tax goes towards cities, towns, counties. Your campaign says government should do less with less. If you kill the car tax, how do you replace the $2.5 to $3 billion a year for local municipalities?
Well, in the immediate moment, we have a surplus in Virginia. So I think there are ways to cover that. Secondarily, I do think the localities are going to have to come up with other ways to decide whether they want to fully fund the budget that they have established. But look, I have to be the one person in Virginia who tells you to your face what's true. Everything you have been told is a lie. This government cannot continue to function with the growth rate that it's on. Take education. We all care about education. We're now spending $21 billion a year on education. $21 billion. That is double what we were spending just 5 or 6 years ago. And my opponent wants to spend another $6 billion. Now, politicians talk about it. It's horrible to talk about changing education because everybody's for education. But there needs to be some sobriety in the room to say we can't keep growing these budgets endlessly. And I don't understand why a lot of folks can't look at a ledger sheet and see that we're in trouble, especially the state government, which has a balanced budget, but is predicated on federal money being in the pipeline. And when things go wrong in Washington, or if there are cuts in Washington, guess what? We're going to have to make some tough decisions. I think you want someone like me making those tough decisions. I'll be responsible, I'll be reasonable, and I'll be fair.
Abortions and reproductive care, as you know, the federal government is blocking funding to some clinics like Planned Parenthood aimed at restricting abortions. What's your plan to address that if you were elected?
It is such a tragedy that funding is being blocked. As we know, so many individuals rely on the essential services of clinics such as Planned Parenthood. And one of the misunderstandings is that Planned Parenthood only focuses on abortion care. In fact, it focuses on a wide range of healthcare services, including services for men as well. And we know that healthcare is at a critical crisis point. When we decrease access and decrease resources, we put Virginians in harm's way. This is an issue that we have to really focus on and support through other means.
Abortion and reproductive care.
Yep.
The federal government is blocking funding to those clinics like Planned Parenthood, as you know, aimed at restricting
which I'm very
abortions.
pleased by.
Right.
Yep.
Where do women then go if such clinics can't offer certain reproductive services? Where do they go?
Well, abortion is still legal, and the amendment that has been put forward by the Democrats is one of the most disingenuous, extreme amendments that's been proposed. I don't think that women are dependent on free clinics like Planned Parenthood, and I don't think taxpayer money should pay for abortions. If that is a conclusion that you reach, personally, I would try to politely discuss that with you if you were in my family, but I accept the law for the moment where it is. What I will not accept is the Democrat plan to take third trimester day of birth abortions and make it an unquestionable right in the state of Virginia. That's one of the most extreme positions on planet Earth, that on the day a baby's going to be born, they can put scissors in the back of the baby's head. Even the people that I know who are in their 20s, young women, who believe that this is a fundamental civil rights issue, which, again, I would discuss with them. But they're very firm on that. When I talk about day of birth abortion, they agree that crosses the line. It's too far. And my opponent and the Democrat Party seem to be doubling and tripling down on that. And I think it's wrong, and we've got to stop that.
I want to talk to you a moment about ending DEI programs. It became a front and center issue recently when UVA President Jim Ryan resigned, following some pressure from the Trump administration over DEI policies and enforcing those policies at that university. Do you fight the federal government on something like this? What would you do in this case when it comes to DEI policies?
We've never seen the encroachment of the federal government in this to this degree on the institutions, especially flagship institutions such as the University of Virginia. And this is broad governmental overreach, and we need to make sure that the integrity and the independence of our colleges and universities is preserved. I've heard from so many constituents, especially alumni of institutions such as VMI, UVA, and George Mason, who are deeply, deeply concerned at the broad power of the executive branch coming from Washington, D.C. into our beloved institutions.
How do you fight that?
Well, we have to strengthen the ways in which we establish our boards of visitors. You know, right now, our boards of visitors are appointed by the governor, and so far in Virginia's history, it's not been an issue, but this governor, unfortunately, has chosen to politicize the boards of visitors, and they have been enacting not just the policies of Trump, but also the policies of Youngkin. We need to ensure that our boards of visitors are committed to the institutions and the students that they serve, and that they remain neutral on these kinds of national politics that are affecting our colleges.
Very quickly, I've got about 3 minutes, so I want to dash through a few other important topics. Let's talk about ending DEI programs. Took center stage in the Commonwealth, as you know, with the resignation of UVA President Jim Ryan, following some pressure from the Trump administration over the DEI policies there. How does someone such as yourself, who is openly gay, support doing away with DEI? Yeah,
DEI is not what everybody thought it was. Yeah. When it first emerged, I think a lot of people thought, oh, well, we're talking about being fair. This is the point. We want to be fair to people. Instead, it has empowered a very expensive set of programs that are actually reverse racism. And I will tell you, we are sowing the seeds right now with DEI and critical race theory for conflict for decades to come. And that's not what we want. I think most Americans buy into the Martin Luther King concept of the content of your character, of you excelling and using meritocracy and excellence as the way we determine who gets an opportunity and who advances in a job. I think most Americans and most Virginians truly believe your skin color doesn't matter. I think your sexuality shouldn't matter. I mean, I don't expect for people to vote for me because of my sexuality. I certainly hope they'll give me a chance and not vote against me for the same reason. I think DEI has turned into something that's really nefarious, and it needs to be driven out of these institutions.
When it comes to attracting businesses to Virginia, as you know, Virginians, this state has dropped from first to fourth in the list of America's top states for business. You've criticized the Trump administration for cutting federal workforces, which is mostly impacting Northern Virginia. There's some impacts here, but not as much. In this area around Lynchburg, what would you do to attract more businesses, more jobs in and around this area?
Well, we have such an abundance of wealth just through our colleges and universities, and Lynchburg is home to so many fine institutions. And that is really the attractive piece for so many companies, corporations, businesses that are seeking to do business here in Virginia. They need a workforce that is talented, skilled, ready to hit the ground running on the emerging jobs that we have. And that is the key to attracting business. And so the more we support our education system, and that starts with pre-K all the way through our institutions of higher learning, our career and technical programs, the better positioned Virginia is to attract that kind of economic development.
When it comes to businesses and jobs, especially after some federal cuts to jobs, especially in Northern Virginia, which is really not impacting us here in Lynchburg and surrounding area that much. But what would you do to attract more business and jobs here?
Yeah, well, I worked at the United States Chamber of Commerce as the head of communications there. I worked with CEOs of the Fortune 500 companies and mom and pop startups. The number one thing that has to be saved in Virginia this 4-year period is the right to work. And it's shocking to me that Democrats like Mark Warner and Tim Kaine and Chuck Robb and Jerry Balaus, they would never have repealed the right to work in Virginia. If we lose that, that means you're forced to join a union, whether you want to or not. Money will be forcibly removed from your paycheck. And these businesses, they're not coming here. Guess where they're going? Bristol, Tennessee. They're going to North Carolina. They're going to South Carolina. Right now, we're the northernmost state with the right to work. It is a huge reason that companies choose Virginia to locate and expand. We better not lose that. The Democrats promise they'll take that away, and I promise you that I will not let that happen. I think Winsome Sears feels very strongly about it, too.
I was doing some research on some data centers. There's more towards the Richmond area and so on. Is that something that you would look into, or you think that we should look into to attract more data centers around this area as well?
Well, we're certainly having those conversations about how we want to both attract economic growth, but also have the structure and the oversight of especially businesses such as the data center industry. It's important that we have state-level understanding because data centers in particular impact our consumption of energy, they impact our electric grid, they have environmental impacts, but they're also wonderful opportunities for economic growth in many of our localities. Having state-level oversight that is able to navigate where we're positioning data centers, what the impact is going to be on our electric grid, what the impacts are going to be environmentally, all of that is necessary.
In your online post, you say it's time to stop wokeism. Give me an example of wokeism and how would you stop that?
Well, the most potent example that I think is affecting a lot of communities that we didn't expect to be wrestling with this is the trans issue. You've got boys, biological boys, competing against biological girls in high school sports. And I think that's fundamentally wrong. I think that those types of policies are built upon a biological lie, a factual lie. Look, I'm the most open-minded guy you'll ever meet. But when you're making public policy, the policy needs to be based on the truth. And if I were to go to London today and say I was the King of England and demand to be admitted to Buckingham Palace, someone would lock me up and say, I'm sorry, you're not the King of England. And I don't mean to be disrespectful to other people. I really don't. I don't want to hurt people's feelings. But I think, again, you need some reasonable, responsible people to say, I can work with your feelings, but I'm not going to validate a factual lie. And I'm certainly not going to build school policy and cultural policy on that lie.
I want to move on to the right to work law. It's my understanding that you want to do away with that law, and if so, why?
I have made my public position known that I support the repeal to right to work, but this is a conversation that we've been having for many, many years, not just in the General Assembly, but in the broader range of all of our stakeholders. The first step, as you know, is to craft legislation that brings together all of the interested parties, making sure that we hear from every individual and organization that is playing a role in this important discussion, and making a decision that is going to be in the best interest for Virginia. We've been making good progress on supporting labor over the past several years, including expanding worker protections, access to collective bargaining, supporting paid family sick leave as well. So there are so many ways in which we can continue to build and improve the condition for workers. And I firmly believe that Virginia can be both the best state for business and the best state for workers.
Speaking of which, when it comes to the allegations of the sexually explicit posts on Tumblr account, and you deny those allegations.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, Governor Youngkin asked you to step away from this race. Do you feel that other top Republicans are distancing themselves from you?
No, because we proved that that was all fake.
Okay.
I mean, that was an orchestrated attempt to smear my name. I'm mad as the devil about it, to be honest with you. But let me tell you, Virginia is more important than my feelings. Saving Virginia from the social justice warriors and the extreme positions of the Democrats is much more important than me continuing some sort of argument over something that didn't even happen.
I wanted to get back to reproductive health for just a moment. This is a topic that's near and dear to your heart about the Right to Contraceptive Act. You've sponsored this act twice. It was twice vetoed by Governor Youngkin. Patients, as you know, now have access to contraception. I mean, why would you need to be able to protect it from like future challenges?
So our protection in Virginia actually comes from the federal level, and it comes from a 1965 decision that was the first decision, the Griswold decision, that gave all married couples in America the right to access contraception. And we know following the Dobbs decision, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas indicated in his brief, in his opinion, that he is ready to revisit the Griswold decision. So if that federal protection disappears, as it did in the fall of Roe v. Wade, if that federal protection goes away, then Virginians don't have a right to contraception. And in fact, we know that there's been many efforts to curtail the rights around contraceptive devices such as IUDs, around contraceptive medications such as the morning after pill and the birth control pill. This legislation is critical because it puts that state-level protection into place in the Virginia Code.
We've got about a minute left. I told you I was going to get to some lightning round questions. I got 4 for you, some quick yes-no type questions. Marijuana. You can legally grow and possess a certain amount in this state, but not sell it. Allow for sales of marijuana?
Yes, and I'll just say we
Real
need
quick.
to have the legal structure in place to do that.
Okay, gun control. Do you favor new gun control laws?
I favor gun safety regulation.
All right. Immigration. Do you support or against the current Trump administration's deportation policies?
I am against the deportation of individuals without due process.
Okay. And term limits. You know, Virginia's governor has term limits, 1 term. The lieutenant governor is unlimited. Would you support limiting term limits for lieutenant governor?
I believe term limits are a good thing.
Okay, there you go. Ghazala Hashmi, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Appreciate you very much.
Thank you so much.
Quick lightning round. A few questions, yes or no. Okay, here we go. Marijuana. You can legally grow or possess a certain amount here. You can't sell it. Allow sales to marijuana?
People are still making the argument. I'm not voting yet. I'm not voting yes yet. I
Gun
promise.
control. Do you favor any new gun control
No,
laws?
I do not.
All
I
right.
want to lock up the bad guys.
Immigration. Do you support the current Trump administration's deportation policies?
We've got to all obey the law. Yes, if you're here illegally, you need to go or get your papers in order.
Term limits. Virginia's governor is limited to 1 term. Lieutenant governor, no term limits. Should there be term limits for lieutenant governor?
Oh, well, I've never been asked that. No, I think that the idea of the governor serving 1 term is probably old-fashioned, but it's good that you put party hassles aside and you focus on what's good for the state. I like that idea. Yeah. We're kind of unique. I'm a traditionalist in many ways, so I kind of like that. No one's asked me about the LG race. I think people get tired of it after two rounds.
Gotcha.
I'm tired already after just starting
I hear
the
you.
campaign.
I hear you. Well, we thank you for your time. John Reid, thanks.
Thank you for having me.